Teachers are not leaving the education system because they want to quit. They're leaving because they're being pushed out. Teachers still love their jobs, they still love their students, and they still love teaching. But when the system continues to pile up expectations on the shoulders and the backs of teachers, while the pay stays stagnant, the support remains low, the message becomes clear. You are not enough. And eventually, you start to believe it. So if you're feeling the weight of a system that's broken and consistently burns out teachers, I want you to hear something clearly. You are not the problem. What we're seeing right now is not a teacher issue. It's not a laziness issue. It is an issue of a system that is broken to its very core. In this video, we're going to break down the 3 specific pressure points that are pushing teachers out the door. We're going to reclaim our true purpose as a teacher, and we're going to build 3 actionable pillars to protect our calling and our capacity. So let's get into it. At the end of the 2026 school year, nearly 300,000 teachers are going to leave the teaching profession, and 270,000 of them will never return. That's not a coincidence. What teachers are experiencing right now are 3 pressures that are pushing teachers right straight out the door every single day. And the first pressure is the breakdown of student behavior. In American classrooms, over 70% of teachers report being verbally abused, and over 56% of teachers say that they have become the victims of physical violence. One of the recent cases of physical violence that played out for the entire world to watch was the case of Abby's Warner. And in that case, a student brought a gun to school, and he used that gun to shoot her through the hand and through the chest. And whenever I think about that, that is absolutely the most ridiculous thing that I've ever heard in my entire life. And the reason why is because teachers aren't trained for combat. We are trained to teach. And yet we find ourselves oftentimes in the middle of a combat zone. If you want to know more about physical violence against teachers, I linked a video for you down in the description box, or you can probably get it right there. So go watch it. The second pressure is the collapse of accountability. More and more teachers report that when behavior problems occur, the responsibility quickly shifts back onto the shoulders of the teachers. Instead of asking questions like, what happened here, or what did the student do? The very first thing that people want to know is, what did the teacher do to cause this? Or what could the teacher have done differently to have prevented this behavior from happening? And what's worse is about 80% of parents nationwide do not support teachers whenever it comes to their students' disciplinary problems. They don't help them. They don't intervene. They don't try to calm them down. They simply put the responsibility and the blame on the teacher. And over time, that doesn't just cause the teacher to be tired. It creates emotional, physical, and psychological exhaustion. And it drains the teacher completely, so much so that they have trouble sleeping at night, they have trouble thinking, they have trouble focusing, and they have trouble controlling themselves in the classroom. And the third pressure is the leadership vacuum. When administrators are forced to choose between a district mandate and a teacher safety, the teacher loses every single time. And so what happens is, instead of defending the teacher directly, it becomes about trying to manage the conflict or to manage the fallout from whatever's going on. Because the thing that administrators fear the most is the reports that go to the district, or even worse, the social media reports that embarrass them. What happens in the process of that is administrators looking for a way to placate the parents without fully throwing the teacher under the bus. But at the end of the day, you can't do both. And when you placate the parent, the teacher is under the bus. And when that happens, the teacher feels like they're standing alone, as if they're on an island. And that's why so many educators I hear today, they're saying the same thing. They're not saying, man, this has been a tough year. What they're saying is, it feels like I am not valued as a teacher or as a human being or even as a professional. And there can be no doubt about it. The pressure that teachers are under today, it is enormous. But one of the ways that we can overcome some of the pressures that we're under is by setting boundaries in our life. And that's why I created a guide for us. It's free, it's 100% free, and it's always free. And it's linked down in the description box, or you can get it there on the screen at the QR code. However you want to get it, just go get it. Because the quicker you get your professional, personal, and relational boundaries in place, the quicker you can begin to overcome some of the pressures that that we're under. I think the biggest thing that has happened to teachers is that our worth has been devalued because we live in a hustle culture. So we're oftentimes evaluated on how productive we are, how much we volunteer, or how much work we can get done. But what is worse than that is our worth or value has often been turned into a data point that's on a spreadsheet, or how high our test scores are. And I want you to know that's ridiculous. And yet that's exactly the way it is in the system. But at Teacher Talk, we're a faith-forward organization, so we take a completely different approach to determine the purpose of a teacher. Proverbs 27:17 says, "As iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another." And I want you to think about that process, because iron sharpening iron, that cannot be a quiet process. I can hear the clanging in my ears right now. It cannot be an easy process. It cannot be a clean-free process. It has to be messy. It requires friction. It requires heat. And that's the way teaching is. Teaching is a process of two people shaping each other. The impact of a teacher cannot be determined by what they produce, how many hours they work, how much they volunteer. It cannot be put on a spreadsheet, and it cannot be turned into a test score. The impact of a teacher is learned 10 years from now in the character of the adult that the student becomes. And so what we learn from that is that the impact of the teacher is eternal, but the capacity or the energy level of the teacher is finite. And that's why teachers cannot live and work as if they're an endless resource, because we're not. You're not called to burn brighter and brighter and brighter until absolutely nothing's left. Rather, you're called to be a steady light that serves your students well. And you can take it from me, trying to burn brighter and brighter, that's not going to work, because 4 years ago, I completely lost sight of my purpose as a teacher, and I nearly lost sight of my purpose as a human being. I woke up one day and my face was completely paralyzed. I had an onset of Bell's palsy due to chronic stress. My doctor looked at me and he says, "John," he says, "I don't know what you do, but he says, if you don't do something about your stress is going to do something about you." And that led to a 3-year coaching relationship that literally saved my life and my career. And if you're struggling in the same way that I did, you can book a discovery call with me. You can find it down in the description box, or you can get it right there on the QR code. I want you to get it because I want you to know that, first of all, you don't have to struggle. But if you are struggling, you don't have to struggle alone. If you want to make it as a teacher for the long haul, you're going to have some pillars of support up underneath of you, because you can't always depend upon your administration. You can't always depend upon the teacher next door or the colleague down the hall. You got to have some firm pillars in place that are going to support you so that you have the energy to make it all the way to the end. And pillar number 1 is work the contract hours only. One of the things that really bothers me about the teaching profession is that somehow unpaid overtime and unpaid labor is seen as a virtuous thing that teachers ought to do. And I want you to know it's not. As a matter of fact, there's no other profession on the earth where people would say, "You know what, I think I'm going to go in and I'm going to work for free." And I also want you to know that working your contract hours, that's not laziness. It's actually professionalism. Now, I know that you're struggling with that because you got a lot of work to do and you're thinking to yourself, "I'll never get all my work done." Well, the truth of the matter is, you're working all this unpaid overtime and you're still not getting all your work done. So here's what I suggest. Start small. 2 days a week, Tuesdays and Fridays. Work your contract hours only. When the contract's up, get up, walk out the door, go home, and enjoy the rest of your evening with your family and the people that you love. On the other days, set a certain cutoff time, 4:30. Do not work past 4:30 the other days of the week. And when you do that, what you're actually doing is you're protecting your students from a burned out teacher, because a burned out teacher is not an effective teacher. Pillar number 2 is kill the customer service model. Yes, we're public servants. Yes, we're here to serve students and parents, but we do not have to tolerate the disrespect that teachers have been tolerating down through the year. If you get into a meeting or you get into a conversation and it becomes disrespectful and it becomes highly contentious, right over there's the door. I want you to get up and I want you to walk out the door and set the boundary right there. You cannot be disrespectful to me just because I'm a public servant. Because boundaries aren't selfish. They're walls that we put up to keep ourselves healthy and to protect our calling as a teacher. Pillar number 3, fight the temptation for isolation. The writer of Ecclesiastes tells us that 2 are better than 1. Right now in America, 44% of teachers say that they feel burned out. 66% of teachers say that they had someplace else to go work. That is exactly what they would do. And the thing about burnout is it thrives in isolation. And I'll tell you why. Because it makes you believe that you're the only one, that you're the problem, that everybody else is doing just fine. If only you work harder and if you do more, somehow you can work your way out of this. And I want you to know that that is not true. Because if you stay isolated, you will break. That's exactly what happened to me. So if you're anything like me and you struggle with teacher burnout, I want to invite you to grab my guide. It's free. It's 100% free, and it's always free. It's down in the description box. You can get it there at the QR code on the screen. Either way, just go get it so we can get things back in order so that you can teach without being burned out. Okay, so that was a lot of bad news. So let me give you some good news. You don't have to face a broken system alone. But if you want to survive this system, you have to understand how the system works. And you're not going to find it in the HR manual. You're not going to hear about it in your EDU classes. You're not going to hear it from your administration. Nobody's going to come sit down and tell you about it. But I want you to know that there's rules in education, but those rules are completely unspoken. In other words, nobody talks about them, but they sure do affect your life and your career in a profound way. And if you'd like to learn about those unspoken rules, you can get one here and you can get one here. But more than that, I want you to stay strong and keep teaching.